Start. Welcome back to the Working on the Dad Pod. I am Alex. With me, as always, is my co-host Ethan, and today we are working on gentle parenting. Let's get to work. Ethan, how you doing today, man?
I'm all right. Today, as we're recording, is August 24th.
Nice.
And as a Lakers fan, my whole life, today is Kobe Bryant Day, which 8/24, if you don't know, his two jersey numbers.
All right.
So today is bittersweet. Obviously, the memories of Kobe were great, but we lost him too soon. It's also it's also my younger brother's birthday. So right before we were recording, I was having a family celebratory Zoom toast for all you out there. What about you? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Being Kobe Day, I spent a lot of time in middle school with my last name being Bryant, telling people that my cousin played for the Lakers
Nice.
and letting them do a long pause. And they're like, really? Who? And then it would dawn on them and they would be mad at me. And I thought it was hilarious. So,
I think it's funny. Gave me a chuckle.
Yeah, I mean, there was a period of time where my cousin also was wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh yes, cousin Dez.
Cousin Dez.
Yeah, cousin Dez.
And my great uncle was a fantastic football coach at Alabama.
Oh, Bear. Nice.
Uncle Bear.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah, we had a bunch of that kind of stuff. Then none of that was true,
Sure,
obviously.
sure.
Just in case anybody thought that I might actually be related to Bear Bryant.
No. I'm pretty sure they all talk about how they're pretend related to you.
Probably. I mean, now that, once our podcast blows up, I don't think Kobe's going to be saying it. Sorry for the dark humor, but
they're hearing this wherever he is. So,
yeah, for sure. That's where we got most of our listeners, I guess. But anyway, let's move into wins and losses for the week. Ethan, why don't you start us off with your win?
Yeah. So it's a milestone win in that tomorrow, August 25th, is my 10-year anniversary with the government. So it just
Nice.
kind of flew by. Obviously, my life is in a much different place now than when I got here, and it's kind of crazy to think about the last 10 years. And obviously becoming a dad was part of that, and a podcast host, mostly the most important part. But to relate this back to my kids is next Monday is also like the first day of fall term. So my little my infant is moving up a classroom. So she's being promoted. So it's going to be
nice. Congratulations to her.
You.
Hard work on her part.
And my toddler is beginning the accelerated track at preschool, which just means I'm paying extra to have her do something during nap time, because I'd say over the last 2 years she's cumulatively napped at school for about 20 minutes. So rather than hearing about how she is preventing other kids from napping, we're just going to bite the bullet, an extra $200 a month, and she's going to be doing, whatever kind of STEM learning they do at almost 4. So my daughter is accelerated starting on Monday. How about you? What's your
win? Well, my win this week, and it's going to come back in my loss too, but my daughter has started VPK, voluntary pre-kindergarten. I mentioned that, and she's been really struggling with the change because it goes from just a like playing, hanging out with your friends kind of thing to a lot more rules and boundaries. And so she's really been struggling with that. And I don't know if maybe this is just me, right? So I don't want to speak for everybody, but when you were a kid, did you always just like kind of cringe or hate when your parents were like, how was your day? Tell me all about your day. Tell me what you learned. Tell me what you did. Like all that kind of stuff?
I didn't like cringe at it, but I was definitely like a moody teenager who just didn't want to talk to his parents once I hit that age.
I mean, even in elementary school, I was just like, it was good. What'd you learn? Stuff. Like I
Mm.
was full of one word answers, and it was just like I felt like I was getting interrogated,
Mm.
right? And I can tell my daughter reacts to those sets of questions the same
Yeah.
way. And my mom and my mother-in-law, they they legitimately want to know about her day and what's going on in her life, and like that is a good thing. So I'm not trying to tell people not to ask, but I can just tell that she is just very over having those questions asked of her, and like I don't remember, I don't
Mm.
know, like she wants to talk about unicorns or something else, right? And so because she's been struggling, the last thing I want to do is like press her on it and say, "How was your day? Tell me all about your day." So I reframed the question because I knew she was struggling. And I found this online, but I asked her, "What's one thing that made you smile today?"
That's a good one.
So it's a very specific question about a very specific event that happened to her. And she usually has an answer. And it's usually something silly that she or her friends did. Like one day during quiet time, she and one of her friends like tickled her teacher's ankle or something, and the teacher was like, "You girls are so silly," and it made my daughter laugh. But what I was trying to do with it is, one, be specific, but also the answer is about smiling and therefore creating positive associations with her struggling with, a lot of rules and a lot of boundaries and like a lot of the just not as much playtime as she's used to, because part of what VPK is about is learning, and it's about getting them ready for
Yeah.
kindergarten.
No, that's cool.
So that's been my win, is reframing that for her and telling her, hey, I get it. It's tough and each day will get better. And yesterday she came home and said it was the best day she's had of VPK. Today was just as great. And so she's getting over that hump. I like to think that my question helps. I think there's a lot of other things that have helped too, but my win is sort of reframing something that I know is an annoyance, was an annoyance for me. And when I hear my mom or my mother-in-law asking it, like I'm still like cringing of like I feel her pain, and I'm like, I'm sorry. Like they want to know they love you, but I get that you're just like, I don't want to like discuss what I did today. That is just not fun for
No,
me.
that
So
yeah, no, that's a good
yeah.
one. I might use that because so our daughter's not like jaded and doesn't answer because she doesn't want to, but like we'll say like, "How was school today? What did you do?" And she'll be like, "I don't know," and then we'll be like, "Well, who did you sit next to at lunch?" And she'll like tell us, or like, "Did you play any games?" Like she requires all of like the specific answers. So
Sure.
it's weird
Sure.
because like I wonder if it's just like a recall problem, or not a problem, but like it's definitely not like a. I don't get the sense that she loathes being asked. It just
No, I think the question's too
yeah.
generic. And then I think my daughter doesn't loathe being asked so much as just then there's like
Mm,
follow-ups. And if her answer isn't understood and there's a follow-up to her answer, she's getting frustrated by like having to re-explain herself, even if she did a terrible job
sure.
of explaining it in the first place. And I'm like, I know what you're trying to say, but that was a really terrible way of saying
Mm,
it. And she's usually doing it over a phone or something and lost in translation kind of stuff. So
yeah.
yeah,
I,
just asking those specific questions can
I
help, but trying not to, pepper her with all of
mm.
them, because it just, I figure that'll lead into more conversation if she wants to
I
have
look
it.
forward to hearing her say, "I don't repeat myself, Ethan."
Yeah, right. Um, what about your loss? What is your loss for the
Yeah,
week?
so our loss is kind of pretty tied to today's topic. I've had a rough couple of days in terms of just like being a little hot headed um, with my daughter, where I have had to raise my voice and yell um, because she's like not stopping when I'm telling her to stop, and then she'll like, for
Yeah,
example, like even just like a couple hours ago at bedtime, she was playing with her little sister, who has um, you all know is not yet one. She'll be one next week, but this is a almost 4 year old on an almost 1 year old, and like
right.
it's a big body weight difference, and I literally had to like pull her off, and I said, "Stop playing with your sister." And she, if you've listened to our mini me episode, um, is a mini me of myself, and she yells back and she says, "Stop yelling at me." And I say, "Don't talk to me like that." And she says, "If I'm raising my voice because you didn't stop when I told you to," which is literally like what I said to her. So now we're in a yell off of stop, and I've been
Oh
bested by a
yeah.
3-year-old because she is a much
She's using your words
she's
against
just
you.
better at being me than me, and it's really
Yeah.
fudging
I
frustrating.
mean, yeah. I can get that for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, and I mean there's some themes there that we'll get into in a minute of like those kinds of things when it comes to gentle parenting. And we were talking before we got on, and like it's a spectrum. Gentle parenting is not a specific thing, but um, before that, my loss for the week also relates to my daughter not really having a great time. Like I mentioned, she's getting better. She's enjoying each day. She's getting through it more like as I told her, as the teacher set the expectation at the open house. She goes, the kids are going to struggle. They may not be happy, but it's going to be the repetition of the rules and learning the rules and learning the standards and learning the different things. And after a few weeks, it just gets easier because it becomes a
Right.
habit. As with all things, I mean, take a new diet or trying to revise your sleeping schedule or wanting to do more meditation, even as an adult. Like building habits are hard, and they're especially hard when you're a 4 year old and you can't completely grasp exactly why you have to do things different when the old way was
Right.
fun and you liked fun and you're not the one instigating the change. But this weekend, past weekend on Saturday, she was sleeping over at my mom's house. My mom texted me early in Saturday morning. And this was one of those days that I was scheduled to have both the kids all day while my wife did whatever the heck she wanted for relaxation. And my mom texts me. She tells me my daughter has woken up a couple times during the night. She's kind of sniffly, stuffy. She's not eating, all that kind of stuff. And so I go over there. And by the time I get there, she's like holding both of her ears and saying that her ears really hurt. End up having to take her to urgent care because the doctor's office isn't open on Saturday. Take her to urgent care. She does have a mild ear infection. It's probably a case of like her sinuses getting too backed up and just building and overflowing. And that progresses, but the loss isn't her getting sick. She got better. You know, we were talking, we got a prescription for antibiotics, but we didn't use it because we wanted to sort of see her fever was not spiking. We were not worried about a fever. She had pain that could be managed by pain relievers, but her fever was topping out at 99.5. So there was just like no cause for concern on like the infection just spiking it. And she's had a history of if we give her antibiotics, sometimes what happens is she'll get like a UTI or some other infection
Mm-hmm.
afterwards. And we just like we don't want to go down the rabbit hole of having to like antibiotic after antibiotic after antibiotic and sort of crush her gut. Well, she gets better. Monday, she doesn't go to school. She's still feeling kind of bad, looking pretty sick.
Mm-hmm.
But by Tuesday, she's got basically no symptoms. She's got some of those like sniffles that like won't go away for like a
Right.
week, but just like, okay, you wake up a little stuffy, and then by the time it's time to walk out the door, you're a perfectly normal kid. She starts doing this thing on Monday night, and then again on Tuesday, and then again on Tuesday night, where she starts asking for us to take her temperature because she understands that if she's running a fever, she doesn't have to go to school. And so
Uh,
she's like, I think I have a
mm-hmm.
fever. And I'm like, you don't have a fever. Like I know you don't have a fever because I've been religiously checking your temperature and you haven't had a fever, which is why I've been just managing your symptoms, easing your pain, especially at night so you can sleep and telling you to drink a lot of
Right.
water. But she was like, I have a fever. You need to check my fever. You know, again, we're gonna get into the attitude and the all that stuff. But I start having to make bets with her, right? Where it's like she gets 2 books for bedtime. And I say, okay, here's the deal. I will check your temperature right now, but here's the deal. I can either not check your temperature and you get 2 books, or I can check your temperature. If you do have a fever, you get 3 books. But I don't think you have a fever. If you don't have a fever, you get 1 book. She's not willing to take the bet. Or the next morning, trying to go to school on Tuesday, I have a fever, check my temperature. You don't, but if you want to, we can listen to whatever pops up on the radio on the way to school. If you want me to take your temperature, you get to choose the music. If you have a fever, if you don't have a fever, you got to listen to a college football podcast.
Nice.
Right? So she didn't want to take that bet. So I've had to call her bluff a couple of times, but then she'll get, frustrated and upset and like, I definitely have a fever. I definitely have a fever. Like I can't go to school. And then she lets out the true reason. I don't want to go to school. I hate school. I'm never going to school, all that kind of stuff. And then it turns into by Wednesday, Thursday, school's great. I had the best day of school ever, that kind of stuff. So
I mean, I know you put that in the L column, but you've basically taught her the pros and cons of gambling. So I'd call that a win.
Yeah, I mean, which is virtue, right? Like wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
But no, I needed her to like, because otherwise it would have just spiraled, right? It would just have spiraled into her demanding it or us. And we have a forehead thermometer that takes
we got one of those too.
5 seconds to get out of the closet, put on her forehead, get the temperature, have a reading. It's not, like I've got to do some oral thing or whatever. It's not that. It's that she always wants it and she's always demanding it. And then she's upset when it's wrong and asks for it to be checked again. And it's a snowball effect. Seems to be fairly accurate.
Because we've got one too, and I'm not going to go down a deep tangent on this, but like it'll be like, well, I'll do hers, and I'll be like, 98.7, that's odd. Mine 98.7, my wife 98.7, and then I'll be like, I don't think we're all the same temperature because I've now touched all of our heads, and then you put it on a slightly different spot, and it's like a huge variation, and I'm never sure with those.
One thing I will say, I think in the instruction manual on ours suggests not doing a bunch of like back-to-back temperatures because like it can mess with the readings. That would be in ours, and you could always check yours to see what it says to do on that, but that could be a little bit of user error of doing too many too quickly. We usually try to check it once, and then if we're unsure about that reading, wait at least 15 minutes or 30 minutes and check it again.
I might be a little too pro Santa Claus with my checking once, checking twice, being a little naughty and not nice.
Yeah. There you go. But anyway, gentle parenting. So as I mentioned, gentle parenting, this is not going to be a lecture by any means of how you do it or why you should do it. I think probably the best place to start is, defining a little bit what it is, which is I have a definition. I'm sure Ethan has a definition and a lot of other people have a definition, but there isn't like what I would call a textbook definition of gentle parenting because it is a bunch of different philosophies sort of weaved together and everybody takes it in their own direction. But essentially what I boil it down to is staying calm in those escalated situations where your kid's upset, not having the authoritarian tendencies that are still fairly commonplace, but used to be even more commonplace of do it because I said so, do it now, a lack of rationale, a lack of empathy, a lack of compassion for the fact that your child, even at 1, 2, all the way up, has real valid emotions and are trying to process things. And so treating them like with as much compassion and empathy as you can in those situations to understand that they're going through stuff instead of saying, stop crying, stop throwing a fit, stop, all those kinds of things and do what I tell you because you're going to make us run late and projecting. There's a lot that goes into it. But for me, and I'll get your definition in just a sec, but like for me, it really is trying to stay calm especially when I am enforcing boundaries for something and trying to do it in a way that she can eventually understand, but also not responding to her. My son, I do less gentle parenting because we're not having as many
Right.
conversations. He can only say one word at a time. But with my daughter, it's not responding when she escalates it in such a way that I'm like, hey, you can feel your feelings, but the boundary is the boundary kind of thing. And if she's going to yell at me or talk at me in a way that is disrespectful, not tolerating it. And for me, there's a line between gentle parenting and permissive parenting, which is just like, oh, I'm so sorry that you're
Hmm.
upset, and like just apologizing and only trying to make them feel better, and then giving them what they want and throwing away the boundary because you don't want them to be upset. What about you? Like, I know that that was a very
No, my
non-specific and very
my
general.
my definition is, I'd say, like 80% the same as yours. You know, calm, empathetic, trying to actually have a conversation with your kid rather than being authoritative and telling them what to do. I can't say I'm always good at that, as I mentioned in my
No.
loss. But I also think, and maybe I can learn something new, but there's definitely like an a an overemphasis on positivity and like not pointing out negatives that I've noticed in gentle parenting slash like gentle learning
Hmm.
that like sometimes frustrates me. So for example, like at my kids preschool, they, instead of being told like that's a good thing you did or you did a bad thing, they're told like green choice for good and red choice for bad, similar to like a stoplight. Um,
Right,
but
right.
like, if you want to say red choice because they've you if the teacher is saying, telling me you're not going to clean up is a red choice, I'd like you to make the green choice and clean up is one thing. But like hitting like another kid and being called a red choice and not like a bad choice kind of annoys me. Like I want my kids to know that bad behavior exists. I don't necessarily like want to make them feel badly about it, but I do think there is a tendency for over gentle positive parenting that I sometimes don't disagree with, where I worry that we do veer too much into like we're not really parenting at all, or for lack of a better word, like it's a little too soft. Again, I don't.
Well,
If I could just, I don't want to like be like my parents who were your traditional boomer parents who like because I said so, like they did some yelling, they were big on grounding, but like
sure.
I did send my daughter to her room for 3 minutes and told her to like think about what she did for 3 minutes, and we put like
Yeah,
and like there's something to that. Like there, I don't think I'm a less empathetic person because I was grounded. I just like like I
right.
can keep going, but I'm like not going to because I'm just
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of like, I think that there, for me, and how it works, because something you were talking about good choices and bad choices and rewards and consequences, there are versions or belief systems around gentle parenting that are all about tapping the kids into their
Mhm.
emotions and figuring out the emotion that triggered the action,
Yeah,
and not so much in like good job, bad job, consequences about it, but just like talking through everything. Not only do I find that completely overwhelming for me to try to
sure.
attempt, of just like, let's sit down and talk about your emotions and how you're feeling and why that led you to hit your brother or something like that. It is so time
It
consuming
is.
from the perspective of like, I've got to wait for you to calm down. I've got to wait for him to calm down because if he's screaming over, I'm going to have to just get louder to be heard.
Which stops me from calming down and adds even more time.
Right, right. And it's just, and then when I'm loud, even if I don't have any malice in my voice, she can perceive it as yelling. So it's just like everybody's got to calm down and then we've got to talk through it. And my daughter is, sometimes I've tried stuff like that of like talking through it, and she has just been like, Dad, I don't want to talk about this anymore. And I get
Mhm.
it. I'm like, okay, yeah, like I kind of get that a little
Yeah.
bit. So for me, it's more about, and I had a great example of something I saw on TikTok today that's just like and I was actually able to put it in action because she really struggled with cleanup time today. And cleanup time, it wasn't very much. She was doing my wife's hair. She's gotten really into brushing my wife's hair and putting a ponytail in my wife's hair and all that stuff. And she didn't want to stop to clean up the tea party that we had done
Sure.
earlier. And it was just taking the plastic tea stuff, putting it back in the
Mhm.
thing. I have to put the table away because it's too high for her to reach anyway. It's just putting it back in the little plastic dish rack and then putting that dish rack on top of her fake kitchen. But she absolutely, melted down about how much she hated it and how much she didn't want it. And there have definitely been times, because again, I'm not perfect, where I'm like, I will raise my voice and say, you need to do it. Like, it is cleanup time. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that you hate it. I don't want to hear your excuses. And some of that is me projecting like my own frustrations with having to deal with this again, instead of practicing the patience that I ideally want to do. A lot of times after those situations, after bedtime, I'm reflecting on those kinds of things and how I can do better. But tonight, it was very much like I tried a tactic that I'd seen where it's just like, she's like, I want to brush mom's hair. I want to brush mom's hair. I don't want to do cleanup. I want to brush mom's hair. And I said, I want you to brush mom's hair. I want you to do that. To do that, you have to clean up
Mhm.
first. You have to clean up your tea party first. And keeping that boundary and talking to her just as I'm talking to you now, where I validated what she wanted. Yes, I can give you that. I can give you the opportunity to do that. But you have to do this first. And the quicker you do the cleanup, the more time you're going to get to brush mom's
Yeah.
hair. Because brushing teeth and bedtime is going to come around the corner if you're going to sit here and you're going to argue with me.
Yep.
And she kept going for a little bit, but I stayed firm in the boundary and I stayed calm and even keeled, even when she, said stuff that I didn't like or said stuff that made me want to snap at her in more of a like, just get up and do it. You've wasted all the time it would have taken to clean it up arguing with me. And I said, hey, you're using up your
Mhm.
time. I want you to be able to do this. I want you to have as much time as possible. Do you want that? Yes. Then let's go ahead and get this cleanup done and just keeping that.
Yeah. I
So,
think I think for me, because that's a really good example. I do try to do that as well, explaining, yeah, you can do what you want to do, but like sometimes you have to do what you need to do and similar stuff. But it's this whole time consuming aspect of gentle parenting sometimes reminds me of um, when you get a work email and it's like paragraphs long of like a request. And my only thought is
mhm.
like, you could have done this in the like four times in the time it took you to write this email. Because I'm going to go
Yeah.
do this thing you've asked me to do, and it's going to take me 30 seconds. I guarantee you that email took you a minimum of 5 minutes, maybe six if you proofread it. And it's just like, what? It just takes that, it's that same kind of frustration where whether you're parenting, whether you're working, where you
Yeah.
just, for me, I just some days I feel like I'm just in a constant frustration, annoyed loop, and
Yeah.
those are the worst days for me to gentle parent because I'm not great.
Yeah. I mean, and today I was super frustrated this
Yeah.
morning. Our son has just been on a tear of getting out of bed at least once a night, coming in the room, and I have to be the one to put him back down because otherwise he wants to nurse. And homeboy's 18 months old. It's not that he needs to nurse. He eats like a trash compactor. It's that he wants the comfort. And he does still nurse some, but it's a comfort thing. And so he'll come in, to our room screaming, "Mama, mama, mama." I have to pick him up And the process is I sing him a quick lullaby, I lay him down, I lay down on the floor next to him, set a timer on my watch that vibrates when it's over for 5 minutes, and 9 times out of 10, he's asleep. 10 times out of 10, or the other one time, I just need another 5 minutes. And so it's pretty simple, but it wears on me when it happens every night because then I have to get back to sleep. And, and then when I'm underslept, it really bugs me when my wife goes, "Oh, he woke up last night?" And my daughter's like, "Oh, he woke up last night?" And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys got to sleep, but also like I kind of hate you
Yep.
right now.
We had the same thing last night. The infant, she woke up. It was within 3 hours of my wife's before bed pump sesh. So like it's not like she could have nursed her anyway.
Yeah.
And I get in there. I'm probably in there for like 30 minutes, and I'm convinced she only woke up because she felt the need to pinch me, because that's what my 30 minutes were like. But because she hadn't fallen asleep yet, like if she, like similar to you, if I can't get her like pretty much trying to fall back asleep within the 30 seconds that I like pick her up out of the crib to just try to resettle her, like she's probably hungry. So she did end up nursing. I did, like after 30 minutes, be like, look, I think she needs to eat. So my wife nursed her, and then but she was just like, I kind of like up at that point. So I, after about an hour, like my wife was in her room, I then had to go back in. So I think overall she was probably up for like 2 to 3 hours. I honestly don't remember the time I got back into my room, but
Yeah.
but yeah, no, I mean, I was like totally dead this morning, to the point where like I overslept my alarm by a half hour until the toddler woke up, and then I actually had to wake up the infant for school because of like how little she slept. And then
Yeah.
normally I get the girls to school by 8:30. This time I got them there closer to 9, and I was very much like, oh, she hasn't eaten in like 5 hours. So I like said to the teachers, like, she needs to eat. Like the moment you can give her a bottle, like that needs to happen.
Yeah. And but back to the gentle parenting thing, on those days, it makes it tougher to gentle parent. I am sure at one point I have said something like to the effect, and I don't remember the exact scenario, but I just have this vision in my mind of saying something to my daughter of like, if you want nice daddy, you'd stay in your bed. She'd be like, "You're not being very nice this morning," or something like that. And I'm like, "Nice daddy was woken up at 3 a.m."
Yeah.
Like, and so that is always tough when you're on a day like today. So my day was that, and then I dropped my daughter off at school. I had my son's 18-month pediatrician just well visit. Then I had, after that, dropping him off at school, I had therapy scheduled, which was helpful for my mental health to like express all these frustrations, but at the same time contributed to my anxiety of like, that ended at 1 because we pushed back our session. That ends at 1. I get home at about 1:15 and haven't sat down at my desk all day. And I'm just like, and there have been some other things that have happened this week, like our internet going out for 36 hours and having to work elsewhere. But that just contributed to that. And like, I was very proud of myself this evening when my daughter's melting down of like not joining her on that level.
Great.
Those things that you were talking about in your loss, that happens to me so often, where like she'll raise her voice to me and I will just instinctively match that level, where it's just like she snaps at me and she goes, "No, I'm doing this right now." And I will come back with, "No, you are not." And just like, that was not the best way to handle that. Immediately regretting it most of the time, but then there's some times where I'm like, "You want to go? Let's go. I'm feeling it today."
I'm pretty embarrassed. I can't believe I'm going to admit this, but last night in my non-gentle parenting, so there was tonight where she was like on top of her sister, and I was told I'm not her best friend anymore when I took them
Oh,
off.
sure.
But last night I raised my voice, and she got really mad, and then my wife thought that my voice raising was not proportionate to what she was doing. And I'm embarrassed to say that, like, I'm embarrassed to admit that I said, well, I am her father and she is disobeying me. And I was like, oh my God, why would I say that? That is terrible, because
That
like
is,
that's not the
yeah.
guy I want to
I
be.
am the
Yeah,
law.
that's like not the dad I want to be at all.
Sure.
But like, I wasn't asking. And now I'm going to justify it. I wasn't asking her to do something difficult. I was telling her not to do something that she thought was funny, that was just annoying to me. Like, sometimes she likes to get undressed for shower in our room instead of her own, and she noticed that on our hamper, you instead of like opening the hamper and putting things into the bag, you can like slide it in through like the handle, but then it goes under the bag, which means that I then have to like take out the bag. Like, it was gonna add like 15 seconds to my day at a later time, but I kept saying,
Sure.
stop doing that, stop doing that. And then eventually I was like, stop. And like,
Yeah.
and I was straight up like, yo, you're
Yeah.
like disobeying me. Like,
Yeah. So it's those moments that for me I tend to walk away from and go like try my best to evaluate like can I do better? And there are definitely days where I'm just like, no, she's being a jerk. Like where I'm just like, she's being a jerk. She totally had it coming, and I'm like, that's probably not the right
no. But
mindset. But
but like, when my kid's 13 instead of 3, like, if I don't nip this jerk stuff but now, she's gonna be a jerk to somebody who doesn't love her unconditionally.
and I think that like I think it's one of those things where this is I guess more of my goal of gentle parenting is to show my daughter that the jerk stuff doesn't
Yeah.
work, right? Like there are situations where like she'll be doing something annoying to me or doing something annoying to my wife. And instead of like yelling at her to stop, just telling her, if you don't stop, I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
leave. If you don't stop, I'm going to walk away. And depriving her of our presence, it can bring on more tears and more emotions than yelling at her can. And so but it becomes a like, okay, people just don't like being treated this way instead of now we're in a yelling match and I'm only focused on how much you're yelling at me and how much I want to yell
So
back. And
yeah, so
yeah,
I do the same thing sometimes, and it gets the same result. Like, my daughter definitely doesn't like feeling like she's been like abandoned, which I obviously empathize with. Um, but I was saying this to my wife the other day, but when she is misbehaving, sometimes I'll be like, "Look, like, you're really you're not listening. You're making this difficult. I'm gonna have to take something away, or like we're not gonna be able to do this activity." And a lot of times, if she's not listening leading up to bedtime, I take away chase, which is like an activity she loves doing. But it does involve
yeah,
listening, because like we're literally running around her room. She could run into furniture. It's happened before. But she'll now be like, I'm not listening, so I don't want to play chase. And I was like, oh my God, she's now taking control of the situation, and has
she flipped it
rendered
on
me
you.
powerless. And again, she's better at being me than me. And it's really frustrating, which makes
That that is that is
it
annoying.
makes
You
the
know,
gentle
like
parenting even harder, because like I'm being
well,
bested.
and that was actually the next thing. Like I kind of wanted
Yeah.
to talk about was those moments of frustration. You know, where it's the same stuff, right? Cleanup time is a perfect example for us of just like she had this meltdown last night, she had this meltdown tonight of not wanting to do it. She wanted to do something else. I handled it better tonight than I did last night. And another prime example is when we go to the gym.
Mhm.
I tell her rule number one of going to the gym, and I make her repeat it. What's rule number one? When I say it's time to go, it's time to go. Because in the mornings, now that she's in VPK, they have a very strict, like, you need to be here at 9 kind of thing. We're starting class learning, not a casual, like we're playing with toys until 9:15, and then we go out to the playground. And so I'm very like, okay, in the mornings we got to go. In the evenings, I have more leeway, but I want to keep the system going so that she doesn't, go, well, yesterday, because we went in the afternoon, you let me have 5 extra minutes. I'm also like, there is somebody in there who is presumably making like $9 or $10 an hour to watch you, that like, that is not fair to them to be like, oh, it's fine, just 5. You keep my kid I'm ready to take my kid, but she wants to stay. So you stay doing that instead of scrolling on your phone to make your $9 an hour or whatever the heck you're doing. I don't know their actual wage, but like, I'm just like, that is not a fair thing to do to that person at the gym as well. Not to mention, I usually need to get home and start prepping dinner. And like, I'm 9 times out of 10 have to get her brother corralled as well. But it's that consistency. And so it's the, choose, like I've also was talking about the gambles. It's also the consequence where it's like, if she walks out that door when I say it's time to go, she gets to pick the music. If she doesn't, I get to pick. And like, staying consistent has been this big hurdle for me of, I am so frustrated that we are having to have this problem yet again, and like doing the I don't know what to do. I'm so frustrated with you. Why can't you be better? Essentially, as my mentality. But then I'm just like, okay, forget it. Just consistent. Just do the same thing over and over again for yourself. And it's like, okay, you didn't listen. I understand you wanted to say, you didn't listen, and now I'm picking the music. And this happens. And like, it is when we're in the afternoons going home and even going to school, either way from the gym is like a 3 to 4 minute drive most. So we are not talking like something, you're barely getting through the intros of a podcast. Right. But it's enough that if I keep doing it consistently today, no problem. She walked right out. She was like, I don't want to listen to Disney music. And I'm like, great, let's get in the car and let's jam to some Rapunzel, And so she was just, but it worked, because instead of getting in the car and being like, I am so frustrated that yet again, we're having to have this conversation. It's like, none of that. Consistently setting the boundaries. And that has been, I would say that has been the most challenging thing, is like when it's something that this is the boundary and we've gone over it 20, 30, 40 times, understanding that like, okay, just keep going. The only way over is through, instead of like blowing up at her or getting really angry at her. And so that's been sort of my biggest battle, is all those little things. It's less the like, for me, the like hurting your brother or stuff. Like, that's bad, yes. But it's like one-time things, and then you can explain it to her and talk to her about it, and it's infrequent enough. But the things that really just get me is like, we do this every day. Every day we have to brush teeth. Every day you have to get dressed. Every day you have to clean up your toys. Every day we have to leave the gym. Why don't you just do it? And there's a phrase that we calmly say to her, sometimes angrily, but usually calmly: if you just followed instructions, your life would be so much easier. And she like didn't understand it for the longest time. And we're like, no, you don't understand. Things like wanting to brush mom's hair. If you just followed instructions and cleaned up the toys, you'd get to brush your mom's hair, and she's missed out on things. And we're just like, we're not telling you like, listen to us because it's going to make us happy. We're telling you that if you just do the thing instead of arguing about the thing that you are definitely going to have to do, that you will get time to do the things you want. But you're wasting that time arguing.
I never remember the whole like, in the moment, I never remember the not fully developed frontal cortex stuff with the ability to like think linearly, and it's extremely frustrating. But one thing I will say I have noticed, and I'm sure this is not unique to my daughter, but I've mentioned before, probably too many times, that I am pretty much solo every Saturday. Normally on
Yeah,
Saturdays, my daughter's great. It is not
yeah,
until the combination of like it's like she's definitely worse when both my wife and I are around because
hmm,
there's a study that like kids are like 80% less well behaved when their mom's around than their dad. But like, I guess that also includes like, the combo of us being together. But the other thing is like sometimes I need to remember that when she comes home from school, even though she like loves school and she feels safe at school, like her safe place and her like comfort zone is with her parents, and she doesn't have to like
yeah,
be well behaved. She's only competing with attention for her sister and rather than like 23 other kids. And like, so she kind of lets loose. Like I also mentioned, like she's starting
sure.
accelerated because she hasn't napped at preschool in like 2 years. So she's
Hmm.
probably pretty tired. Whereas, like on Saturdays and Sundays, when she's home, she will have that 2.5 to 3 hour nap in the middle of the day, still. But it's, sometimes I'm happy that she feels comfortable enough to like let loose at home and around us. But like,
Yeah,
man, like, can you still like process directions and like, just
yeah.
it's
And I think this is a good opportunity. I mentioned it, I believe, in our last episode, but the concept of special time,
yeah,
and this is, I touched on it and told people to go research it, but just to give a brief synopsis, it's like this idea that when kids get home from school, and this is not something that my daughter still does this, and like up through parts of elementary school at least, it's a very common phenomenon where kids are on their p's and q's. They're minding the rules. They're in this very structured environment that is forcing them to be good, in air quotes there, but follow those rules. And then when they get home, they release that emotional baggage. Is exactly what you're talking about, but it's so not unique to your
yeah,
daughter that it's very, like, I would say it's the vast majority of kids actually have this issue. The concept of special time is one parent. So if you're in a multi-kid household, one parent takes the kid and goes, somewhere where it's just one-on-one attention, and they essentially get to choose what you do. You don't put rules on their imagination because it's an opportunity for them to provide the structure and for them to be in charge and for them to feel the autonomy. The only stops are like, you are going to cause me or yourself bodily
mm,
harm, right? Like, other than that, it's like, if you want to play dress up as penguins, I'm dressing up as a penguin. You are in charge for 10 minutes. Like, this does not have to be a long thing, but doing something like that every day, I I am frustrated that it is not something we are able to consistently implement because of the chaos of the nighttime routine. I tell this to people not as like a, I do this consistently, but when we did have the space to do it before my son was born, it was actually working pretty well and giving her that one-on-one time. She seems to be in much better spirits emotionally when she has been with one of her grandmas without her brother,
right.
getting that same kind of one-on-one attention. And she's in much better spirits when she's one-on-one with one of us and the other one is taking her brother. And so this is a pretty well studied area of psychology. And the actual term that they've coined for it is special time. But that is definitely something that if you are struggling with it and you want to read up on it and you can devote that 10 minutes a day to just like doing it, that can help some of those things. But otherwise, yeah, it's a very common thing that they're
Yeah.
just going to let their hair down and go crazy once they get home.
Yeah, I wish we had, well, I wish we were better at prioritizing and carving out special time, um,
Same.
on a daily basis because it's definitely, I'd like to do it. Um, but I'd say the closest to it is that, finally the fact that I'm a really fast eater in general, and my wife is a slow eater, has paid off. Where typically when we're having dinner, like whichever one of us is feeding the little one, like or it, let me restart. Like she can feed like help the kids with their food, and I'll like eat up, and then I'll be done, and I can like focus on like when one of them's like done eating at the table, like I can go play with them, and she can like have a few minutes to herself to eat. So the
Yeah.
closest thing to like a consistent special time is if the infant is having a really good meal and my toddler is just like sick of being at the table. I'm usually available to like go play with her throughout the end of the meal. But I will say it's not as structured as it could be. It's not as it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's not as
Consistent.
not consistent. It's not as purposeful as it's supposed to be.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that intention can matter, but even doing something like my daughter will get home and if my wife is available, this is part of it. Like sometimes I bring the kids home or the kids arrive home and my wife has work that she's got to finish up, or maybe she's teaching like a live fitness class at like 5:30, and so she's not coming in until 6, and I've got both kids, and like once that motor starts going and that hair starts getting let down and you haven't like sort of stopped it, by the time she gets in it's like, okay, we've got to eat dinner because we've got to proceed with the rest of our night. But on the nights that like my wife can be there and be available, it's not going to stop every meltdown. So I don't want to act like it's some special thing, but like maybe my wife takes her and she does my wife's hair, like I was mentioning, or maybe they read a book and it's like an interactive book or something, and just they do stuff together. But I can tell that my daughter really craves that. But from from a gentle parenting perspective, that's one thing you can do to sort of help the kids regulate their emotions. But I don't know. For me, it is this constant struggle, and I know we've sort of harped on that, but I want to just hammer it home for people that like, I am just so far from perfect, but I try to consume resources that help me with those little like ideas where it's just like I saw a TikTok today that I mentioned that was just like talking about a kid melting down and like how to handle it in just this consistent, firm, not aggressive, not raising your voice, the kind of thing of like, I understand that that's what you want. I want that for you. Let's get that done as soon as you do what you need to do. And I immediately took that, applied it to cleanup. Did she clean up any faster than she did the night before when I was probably snappier with her? Maybe a little bit. Was I less stressed and more ready to continue with not feeling like pulling my hair out and like, oh my God, I need a beer as soon as I walk out of bedtime kind of attitude? Yes, I was in a better mental place. I was and so if nothing else, I would say this to people that like, if you can get a good handle on your emotions and how you handle the situation, yes, there are probably going to be benefits for your kid of modeling that behavior and teaching them that this is how people communicate with each other effectively. But at the same time, like it's probably just good for your mental health that like you're not stressing about it. Of like, I've got the boundary, I've got the consequence. If they can't meet the expectation, I've explained it to them. I'm allowing them to feel their feelings. Whatever happens, happens. Go with God, kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I think what I am going to work on mostly, in addition to everything, is I definitely need to be better at choosing to continue with gentle parenting when it's taking too long and I'm getting really frustrated. Like
Yeah.
I'd I'd like to think I am in control of my own emotions, so I'm going to put some of the uh, responsibility and fault on me whether it be subconscious or consciously, like making the choice to raise my voice. Did not intend for that to rhyme, but I'm really happy it did. Um, because I probably could have not yelled with the hamper situation last night. Like
Sure.
and I definitely did.
15 seconds. You could have pulled it out, pulled the
Yeah.
bag, showed her, and said, "Hey, look, this is where your laundry ended up when you did
Yeah.
that. This is frustrating for me. If you could please put it over the top next time."
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Is that what I would do? Absolutely. Some of the
Yeah.
time. Would I yell some of the time? Absolutely.
Right. And I really just want to cut down on the bad choices, and it's a lot easier said than.
More green choices.
Yes, you're right.
We call them green
need to make
choices here.
green choices. I need to stop making red choices, which, as a redhead, I kind of find a little bigoted, to be honest. But that's a whole other topic of discussion. Yeah. Anyway, it's a little later for us tonight, friends. We started a little later, so
We're getting
yeah,
loopy,
we are getting
but
loopy.
But anyway, if I would say to anybody, if you guys have great resources, as you can kind of tell from the content of this episode, we are not pros or professionals.
Which we're
there are
not
a few.
on
I know.
anything, actually. Any episode, we're not pros.
No, we're definitely. But I just like there are some things that I feel like I've got pretty well
Right.
solved, and I've got other things that I'm just like not. This is one of those where I'm like, man, I really need a lot of work on it. So if you have great resources, drop them in the comments. Anywhere you get this episode, YouTube's probably the best spot, I would say. One I can say that we both utilize from time to time is Big Little Feelings on Instagram. There are several others that I don't remember their handles, but I follow them on like TikTok, and so I will try to tag them on TikTok when we get around to posting this episode. But time for working on the dad bod.
Oh, right, yes. I did.
Yeah, so I figure before we leave, we'll do a quick weigh check in.
Yeah, so
and then wrap things up.
I was happy today. My weight that I did this morning. I also had a good. Today is a Thursday. I go into the office on Wednesdays, but I have jogged Monday, Tuesday, and today. So that's
Nice.
3 out of my 3 days working from home that I have, in fact, worked out. So I'm pretty happy about that. My weight check today was 188.2.
Nice.
As I mentioned, my goal is 175. So, chipping away. How about you?
Chipping. So for me, I'm trying to look at, like, I think last week I was at 186. This week I was at like 186.2 or something like that. This week I'm at 185.4.
Nice.
So down 0.8 from the week before. It goes. It's one of those things where if you look at my like month, and I'll try to get it where it's not having a glare on it, you can see that it looks like a lot of peaks and valleys. Yeah, maybe just hold it a little bit closer.
That's all time.
Getting that weird rainbow effect. But what I like to do is I like to go to the year, because then it shows me this nice smoother line and lets me know that I'm going in the right direction. So, anyway, the graph, that was kind of terrible. I was getting a lot of rainbow lines and reflections.
Yeah.
Sorry for everybody watching video, but a nice smoother line. We're getting there. I probably lost 2.5 pounds with the new scale that I've had, and that's been about 3.5 weeks ago. So, setting my goal at, I think I have it at 0.5 pound a week. I initially started off at 0.25 pounds per week. I bumped it up to 0.5 pound just because like 0.25 pounds is only like 125 calories a day. And I was just like, the variability of like missing those numbers day in and day out and like not getting anywhere or trying to track that. But I'm like, hey, 3.5 weeks, 2.5 pounds. that so far seems sustainable because I find myself on some nights that I've really like dialed in my protein and
Mhm.
stuff that I'm like making myself a sandwich at night to just like get my calories because I'm like 500 under and I don't want to be super hungry the next day and make a mistake. But
Yeah, I'd say where I'm not struggling because I am doing a much better job at portion control and slowing down, but I am still like I do still care about like food waste, and I am probably like, for example, this morning um I had two slices of pizza because they were going to go bad otherwise. So my breakfast was two slices of pizza. Is that the best
you can
breakfast?
freeze pizza.
Yeah, I know, but like they had been in the fridge, and like I've been slowly chipping away at the leftovers, and we ordered.
Sure.
I'm not going to admit the day it was ordered, but I'm just going to say like it needed to be eaten, so I ate it. And granted, it wasn't from Domino's, but I use like when I put in the pizza, I like in my calorie app, I use Domino's because Domino's has like probably overcounts it a bit. So
Okay.
so that's why I do it. So it was essentially like a 600 calorie breakfast. But I mean, I then had my um, and I then had the cottage cheese that I would have had otherwise for lunch.
Here's the thing. Weight loss is calories in,
Yeah.
calories out. I mentioned this in the dieting episode. Like the only reason there are probably several reasons, but like if you say like weight loss calories for you are 2,000 calories and you consume 2,000 calories of meats and vegetables and brown rice or 2,000 calories of Twinkies, you will lose weight either way. There are studies
Yeah.
on this. I'm not making this up. That when you control for calories, it does not matter what you eat to lose weight. The problem with eating 2,000 calories of Twinkies is you're much more likely to overeat because you don't
Right.
feel
Right.
satisfied, but or you might feel sick to your
Sure.
stomach from eating 2,000 calories
That
of
could be like two
Twinkies.
Twinkies. Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, you ate a 600 calorie breakfast. I ate oatmeal with raisins and chia seeds and peanut butter and milk and protein powder in it. And it's like, okay, I had the healthier breakfast. My breakfast is 535 calories by intention.
Yeah.
You're not that
Right. No,
far
no, no. I
off.
no, I know. I just
Like I would just say to people out there that like don't kick yourself for
yeah.
pizza for breakfast. Kick yourself for like eating 3,000
So
calories over the course of the
so for
day.
me, it's not the fact that I had the pizza. For like, it's not the pizza itself, because I'm gonna throw a hot take out there that pizza's actually pretty healthy if you have it in moderation, because it's most of the food groups. You got your dairy, you got your veggies, you got your meat if you're doing it right. You've got your carbs, but it's that
Fruit if you're throwing some pineapple on
yeah,
there.
tomato can go either way. And
I saw someone put kiwi on a pizza on
that's
Twitter.
silly.
Like not a person that I like actually know and could
I'm really,
condemn
I'm really
him.
not that big on free on pizza. Like I just let the tomato. I'll let the tomato have the debate with its own identity and count it. But,
Yeah, okay.
um,
That's fair.
but I will. But it's more about the fact that for me, I'm usually the least hungry in the morning. So like
Hmm.
I like bank on myself having like a really low calorie, smaller breakfast, because like I
Right.
know I'm probably gonna have more. I'm probably gonna back end my calories, right? So in my mind,
Sure.
it's like, well, I had 600 to start, so now like I had to mentally keep that in mind.
Yeah, you have to
Right.
calibrate the things for later. I
Yeah.
get that, right? Where it's just like every Thursday I have exactly what I described for
Right.
breakfast. I have it every Tuesday too, and so like I kind of go into the day, understanding where I'm at with that. So I definitely get
Yeah.
that because consistency, like I think a lot of people would be very bored to hear like what I eat throughout the week, and nobody's asking, so I'm not going to sit here telling anybody. But like one of the best things I think you could do for weight loss, and I don't mean you, Ethan, I mean anybody, is like, yeah, have things you want. If you're craving chocolate, if you're craving pizza, like have those things, yes. But like the large majority of your diet, like kind of make it boring in a sustainable way of like, I know that I'm going to have this for breakfast and I know this is kind of going to be my morning snack, and maybe you have a couple options, and it's just like, you know, make it things you enjoy, but at the same time, then it just becomes like you're not playing the like math game at dinner time of like, how many bites of spaghetti do I actually get?
It's also one less decision to make, you know, like,
Right.
you know, if I were better at grocery shopping, in terms of like doing that consistently, then I would be have more consistent. But you know, like it's, you know, like so one thing, you know, we're running way over, but I will say for a lot of most Sundays we will do like a Zoom dinner with my mom and brother, and that's like become like a little like tradition over the last few years, and we usually order in for that. So depending on what we order depends on like the number of like leftovers, and you know, again, food waste,
Sure.
not a fan. So like I'm not going to let like expensive takeout food go to waste. So it does sometimes throw out the calibrations, especially since my wife's not the biggest on leftovers. My toddler's definitely not the biggest on leftovers. So like if we order like Chinese food and we've got like a couple things left over, you know, those are going to be my lunches, and I've got to factor that in.
You gotta pack them in. I get that. Like sometimes I'll cook something and it'll make like 8 servings, and I'll be like, oh man, you know, we can get quite a few lunches out of this, and like have some, as we call them, scrounge nights where we're just picking through leftovers. And I'll walk in the kitchen, start making lunch, and I'll be like, hey honey, can I make you some? And she goes, no, I had a protein shake and I'm kind of good. I'm like, the protein shake is non-perishable.
Yep.
And you're over here letting these meatballs that I made go to it. Like, you know, I'm just like, eat the leftovers.
To go
But
to do another boomer throwback, if I had a nickel for every time
yeah, right.
my wife said this would be good to make because it'll give us leftovers, and then she didn't need the
And then didn't eat
leftovers,
the leftovers.
you know,
Yeah, I mean, there were things, especially when my wife was pregnant, where it was like she would have that idea of like, then we don't have to cook as much, and we can just make one thing, and we can sort of pick at it through the week. And she would eat it, and then she would be sick of it. Like literally, there were things that I made. Like if you've ever heard of ropa vieja,
Yeah.
it's a Cuban food. I made a chicken version. She didn't want beef at the time. I made a chicken
Pollo
version.
vieja.
Well, no, it's chicken ropa vieja. I don't know. Like, I don't think it's authentic. Let's not get into that. I'm not trying to act like I'm. But it was really good. I mean, like she said the words. She ate it the first time and was like, "Holy cow! You did not come to effing play." And my 2.5-year-old daughter at the time was like, "Why did he not come to effing play?" And I'm like,
Yep.
really?
Yeah.
Then she was sick of it.
Yep.
She had it for leftovers once, and I couldn't make it for 2 years, Ethan, because she was like, "No, I just get nauseous thinking about it." So I've definitely been there.
The number of times it has been suggested to me that it'd be really good to make like a stew in the Instant Pot that we can all eat, and then you know we all eat, you meant me.
I mean, like I will quite often like do something that involves like braising or slow cooking a pork shoulder, like throw it back to my North Carolina heritage and just have like a bunch of shredded pork, like 6-7 pounds of shredded pork in my fridge. And I get very creative on how I consume at least 5 of those pounds.
Yeah.
And my son is usually taking 3/4 of the other pound.
Right.
And like it turns into that where it's just like, yeah, you should have something that we can pick at through the week and like throw on sandwiches. I'm like, what's better than a pulled pork sandwich? And she's like, anything.
I've got one very quick pulled pork story. The first time, it was either the first or second time I made pulled pork. I grabbed like because my old crock pot, we still have it, but we use an Instant Pot now. But my old crock pot could hold like easily like a 14-pound pork shoulder. And like,
Yeah.
I got the pork shoulder was on sale. So like I bought one, and I bought a bunch of hard apple cider, like Magners. And
Yeah.
my thought was, I really like Applewood smoked bacon. So, like, why don't I just cook this pork shoulder in like a couple bottles of this apple cider? And it was good because the flavor profiles are the same: Applewood smoked bacon, apple cider pork shoulder. So this is just I could do a whole other podcast on flavor.
I feel like I would have just gone with apple cider vinegar because that just feels like a much more common vinegar-based apple flavor.
You're being stupid. You're just being dumb. You drench your pork in the alcohol, and it's great.
I've had a lot of good pork in my lifetime. As I mentioned, growing up in North Carolina, and I think there are a bunch of people that would shun you for doing that.
I will say this: I'm a Jewish guy from Los Angeles, and I just talked about eating pork shoulder, so I'm already going to the bad place.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you're done for. But I think eat what you want to eat. I like pineapple on pizza, and if you don't like pineapple on pizza, that's fantastic. I'm not making you eat mine.
Yeah. I've tried.
Ketchup belongs on hot dogs, and if you don't want it, don't have it.
Pineapple on pizza, like a Hawaiian pizza. I've wanted to like it, and every couple of years I will try it. I just can't do it. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work for me. It just doesn't work for me.
It's great. I love it. But hey,
more for you.
Yeah, I mean, we're not sharing a pizza usually so I'm good with that. You can also half and half it. All sorts of stuff. Anyway. We're rambling. We're delirious. It's late.
It is.
But thank you guys for working on the Dad Pod with us. If you have any gentle parenting tips, as you can tell, we really need them. So please reach out in the comments.
Also throw in any fun recipes that someone might have made fun of you for, because I want to try it.
And we will return the favor with some fun recipes that I have made fun of Ethan for.
Oh, yeah. But they taste great.
But, yeah.
It's a victimless crime. It's not even a crime. That's a whole other topic.
I mean, you're the victim. You're the victim and the assailant. Stop hitting yourself. So yeah. All right, guys. Have a great one. Right. We'll catch you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for working on the Dad Pod with us. Any resources that we mentioned during the show will be in the show notes. If you have questions, thoughts, or just want to talk with us, the best place is in the comments on YouTube. We're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and Threads at Working on the Dad Pod, and on Twitter at Working on Dad Pod. Following and subscribing is always appreciated. Please rate and review us. That helps get the show to new people. And if you know a dad who would enjoy our show, sharing it with them is a huge help to them and us. Have a great week.